Thursday, the 12th of October. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Start out with a couple of vulnerabilities, patches, so on and so forth. There are two high severity flaws that have been discovered in the curl libraries. So patches are available. Curl is a data transfer library. Very commonly used in Linux. It's curl and wget are the I think the two that are most commonly used. But curl has a couple of vulnerabilities. CV 2023 38545 and 38546. Not amazingly high CVSS scores, 7.5 and 5.0. The first of them is a SOX 5 heap-based buffer overflow vulnerability. The second one is a cookie injection vulnerability. Not the easiest things in the world to execute. I think you would have to programmatically execute them via an API calling curl to do X, Y, and Z. And you would also rely on having to use the SOX 5 system to, in order to be able to exploit this particular vulnerability. Patches are available, so recommended as always. Keep on top of this stuff. Apply the patches, especially as curl is so commonly used, and just sitting there pretty much on every distro of Linux, waiting for you to make use of its wonderful features. Worth keeping on top of this. Okay, there is a new WordPress backdoor that's being used to create rogue admin accounts and hijack websites. It's a fake plugin, and it is masquerading as a cache, I believe. Excuse me. The malware has the ability to create users. It can identify bots. Now, the reason that that's interesting is it can then direct bots to malicious sites for things like search engine crawlers. You get categorized. You get basically recorded in search engines as the data is elsewhere and it's all full of malware, blah blah blah. So they can redirect users. Content replacement. So alter pages, insert spam links, and so on. It can also do plugin controls, so the malware operators can remotely activate or deactivate WordPress plugins on a compromised site, which does mean that it is possible to disable any WordPress security features that you've put in place, and also it provides a backdoor. There's some details in a good article from Bleeping Computer about this, and it is something I think you need to keep on top of. As always, WordPress is very functional, but it's a complex environment. Lots of individually managed components in there, plugins, and so on, that all have to be very carefully understood and maintained. So, as always, if you're running, with WordPress, if you're running your websites on WordPress, do make sure you understand how all of it is working and do keep it all up to date. And again, keep the basic hygiene for your WordPress site is very important. Don't put your admin interface, obviously on the internet. For example, use strong authentication for admin accounts and so on and so forth. Basic hygiene will keep you safe from the majority of attacks, although not from everything. So on to some more interesting, academically, I suppose, more interesting articles that I've come across. There's a good article in Dark Reading around data thieves using a new method of abusing certificates in order to get software, malware, to install without triggering the usual unsigned software issues. So kind of the way it works is combining search engine optimization poisoning, and therefore delivering results featuring malicious pages, prompting, say, illegal software cracks and downloads. Now, in the background, if you go to these sorts of sites, during this this particular campaign, you are likely to find that remote access Trojans, Luma C2 or Record Breaker, sometimes known as Raccoon Stealer V2, are then downloaded in the background to your system. So that's okay, you've got the malware. However, rather than the normal way of avoiding the unsigned software alert, with the normal way being, well, just get a legitimate certificate one way or another, which I suppose is, that's, whilst it's proved not to be that hard, it does require a certain amount of work on the part of the attacker. Well, this simply uses very long strings in the subject name and issuer name fields, and especially strings that contain Arabic, Japanese, or other non-English characters, special characters, punctuation marks, and so on. The effect of this is that the majority of certificate checking routines on common operating systems, Windows and so on, won't be able to actually check the validity of the certificate. Now, that does mean that, at least in some instances, the certificate's accepted, even though it's not legitimate. So if you were to use some deeper level tools to look into the certificate, it would very clearly fail signature verification. But because the method used here effectively confuses some of these defenses, it does allow for this malware to slip through and get installed. It's an interesting article. Links out to some further information. Recommend having a read of it. I suppose what the recommendation would be, well, be serious about where you're downloading your software from. If you are going to sites that promote illegal software cracks or illegal software downloads, don't be surprised if you become the target of attacks. You're effectively doing something illegal, so why would you trust the people that are effectively helping you to do the illegal thing? Bear that one in mind. So sometimes certain protocols just get left behind in the technology race, but then find themselves being used in ways that were probably never the original intention. SMS messaging is one of those systems that has it dates back to 1993, and has very little, if any, security around it, but is still being used for things like delivering 2FA keys. So it came across a really interesting article on Cybersecurity News that actually points out, and there's nothing earth-shatteringly new in here, but there are some very good reasons why you should be cautious about using SMS at all, anyway, these days, and definitely should be cautious about using it for stuff like delivering 2FA keys. So, the first one being there is, at best, iffy end-to-end encryption. So, it the majority of providers are not really, because you're dependent on your mobile provider, right? If your mobile provider employs encryption, it's likely to be poor and outdated. Probably they're not encrypting things, so your SMSs are probably being sent as plain text. So there are really no restrictions on anybody who's got access to the network, which isn't as difficult to get as you would like to think. They can read and change, intercept, so on and so forth, those messages. Even when there is encryption, it is not something that many providers have put any effort into, and so it is probably poor quality. The signaling protocols are ancient. They use what was then fairly good, but is now very old. Signal System Number 7, SS7, which is a 1970s protocol. It's out of date, highly insecure, and it is vulnerable to all sorts of cyber attacks. It has been used to circumvent two-factor authentication and drain people's bank accounts. So be careful there. Governments can also read your SMS texts. So, asking the question, why haven't the security flaws in SS7 been fixed? Well, one reason is probably that nobody is pressuring the mobile providers to do this, and government agencies are quite happy to eavesdrop on their citizens or others using SMS. I wasn't aware, but in the article it points out that in the US, law enforcement don't actually even require a warrant to examine correspondence that's over 180 days old. So, having this stuff easily available, of course, is that's good for them, but it does mean it's also available to attackers as well. Messages are stored by your carrier, so you may think that once it's delivered, but actually it sits on the carrier's systems. The length of time it sits there depends on the carrier. The metadata, though, is held for a very long time, and this stuff is determined, I think, by the carrier rather than anything that you can do anything about. SMS messages can't be unsent. There is no method. If you inadvertently, if you drunk text something to someone, you can't recover it. And so, as the article quite rightly points out, please move from SMS to a secure messaging app one way or another. I think the thing that worries me is that a lot of 2FA is still reliant on SMS. That is a really bad idea. Increasingly of the opinion that it is possibly worse than not having. Well, no, maybe not sure. But it does give you a false sense of security. So if you are going to use 2FA or MFA of whatever kind, stick to something which is not SMS based. Because as you can see, SMS is basically not secure at all. And finally, from me, a really interesting article from Graham Cluley, um, pointing out that it appears on Friday Facebook's official UK account was compromised, although it appears that it was compromised by um, a cricket fan who didn't actually intend to compromise the account and wasn't even sure that they had compromised the account. Um, so yeah, posted some updates around cricket. And posted a call for the release of Imran Khan. Well, yeah, some other bits and pieces as well from there. Meta's response was to delete this guy's actual account and any of his other Meta-owned accounts. Yeah, well done, Meta. So yeah, it is, I think, very interesting to discover that Meta is not even capable of securing their own accounts, let alone anybody else's. Always had some concerns about this, but there we are. So if you want an interesting read, just amusement, I would say that is a good one. We will link all of these articles to the briefing after the briefing. And I would say thank you all for listening, and hope you have a good Thursday. I will speak to you again tomorrow morning.